Hi, this is Ren.
This is Casey.
And this is All Walks of Film. So, this is not a positive podcast of the film, so I'm just giving you a warning right now. This is not the podcast you're looking for.
This is not the podcast we're looking for.
Move along.
Move along.
Alright, so we just watched The Last Jedi. I personally avoided all trailers. I tried to go into the film as raw as possible, and if you're
you can't be that raw about it when there's already 8 movies to watch before this.
Right, but I tried to avoid trailers and all that kind of stuff, and I was really good at it. I mean, you saw me.
Yeah, you were really good. You were much better than I was.
Yeah, and we did a podcast yesterday for any Patreon subscribers that are interested of what we thought our takeaway for the movie was going to be. And I will say, while we were varied in our responses to that, our takeaway was closer than we could have ever expected.
Yeah, I mean, going into the movie, I kind of thought, well, I'm probably going to like the movie. Probably not as much as everyone else is, just because of how many really, really good movies there were this year. You know, I was kind of like, I'm probably not going to be, like, blown away like everyone else, but I'm probably going to like it. I'm probably going to have, like, some major issues with it. But overall, you know, it'll probably be, okay, cool. This is another part of Star Wars. Nice. I wasn't expecting it to be like that episode of South Park where they watch Indiana Jones.
Do explain.
The one where they all watched Indiana Jones get raped by George Lucas?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Like, there was legitimately a point, and I can explain this more when we get into it, but there was legitimately a point where I was sitting in the movie theater, and, you know, they're talking and having their exposition, and I thought about it and was like, oh my god, is this what Star Wars is like? Is Star Wars stupid? Oh my god, I think I hate Star Wars. Not like the movie, like everything. I was like, oh my god, Star Wars is complete and utter shit. It was always shit. Oh my god. And then I thought about it for a while and was like, no, that's not true. This just really, really sucks. But it was like Wonder Models levels of bad, where I was watching it and I was honestly feeling embarrassed for liking Star Wars. Like, it was kind of like if you're a Rick and Morty fan and you see that video of that, you know, total wanker at McDonald's is like, Rick! It was like, Rick! But it was like that for 3 hours. Give or take about 15 minutes during its runtime that were actually decent. It was like watching midichlorians, but over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I was going into the film expecting something a little bit familiar, kind of like The Force Awakens. I was expecting a film that was more like The Empire Strikes Back. You know, The Force Awakens is kind of our A New Hope, and I thought this was going to be our Empire Strikes Back.
Plus, you really like the director.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rian Johnson, before this, hadn't failed me. He has an amazing track record. So, to say that my expectations were higher because of that would be an understatement. I mean, he started out with this great neo-noir called Brick, which was a really amazing film with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Really loved that movie. He also did The Brothers Bloom, which I didn't watch, but I have heard good things. He did Looper, which is a great sort of deconstructionist time travel movie, which also has a lot of interesting things that show that Rian Johnson is also a fan of anime. And he directed 3 legitimately great episodes of Breaking Bad, including one of my all-time favorite episodes of TV ever, Ozymandias.
Yes.
So, when I heard the news that Rian Johnson was going to direct the new Star Wars movie, I felt like he was going to fix J.J. Abrams' mistakes.
No, that definitely didn't happen. Like, this was just embarrassing. It was really terrible. We should get into it. Let's get into it. Leia in space. Let's start there. Let's start with the fact that multiple times in this movie, space is not even an obstacle. Like, it's just not really a problem that you have to deal with. Like, one of the very first scenes in the movie, there's, like, a kamikaze bomber, which we need to get into the, like, over-glorification of kamikazes in the movie. Like, it's a little ridiculous. But there's a kamikaze bomber, and, like, the bottom of the ship opens up, and she's at the bottom of the ship, and she's totally fine in space. It's cool. She's fine. She only dies because of the bomb. She doesn't die because of space. No. But Leia in space. Like, I thought Guardians of the Galaxy was pretty bad, when it was just like, you can just be in space for a while and survive. It's fine. It's like being in the ocean. You know, as long as you're not in there too long, you won't drown. That's not how space works. It's ridiculous. But in the movie, Princess Leia gets exploded into space, dies, but is so strong with the Force that she wills herself back to life and towards the spaceship and gets herself into the spaceship and then is rendered comatose by space.
Well, it was,
This was an actual thing in Star Wars. In an episode of Star Wars that's supposed to be taken seriously. This is not a joke. This is not a parody. In real, actual Star Wars lore now, Princess Leia is flown around in space for a little bit and Force wills herself back into a spaceship. And essentially is fine.
Also, a big sin of the movie is this is the only time we have ever seen Leia use the Force outside of communicating through the Force.
Which the telepathic communications with the Force are kind of a big problem. Although, simultaneously a really big problem, but also one of the only redeemable qualities in the movie. Which is really bad.
Well, the biggest problem that I have with... I can't even say that. So let me backtrack for a second. This film has a lot of issues. The biggest being that it breaks the logic of the lore set before it.
That's a really big problem. Like, that's midichlorian level bad.
Yeah, while this is a fictional piece, there are rules set up, and while the rules can be bent, like the Force can be bent, and rules can be bent using the Force, this movie took that to a level that essentially just made everything magic. You know, I mean, it was essentially
it was just magic. It was literally just, I want this thing to happen, therefore it happens. That's not how the Force works.
Well, yeah, and to be fair to the original concept of the Force, at least how I understand it in the Star Wars universe, it's borrowing a lot from the idea of chi. You know, drawing the Earth's energy, drawing life energy, and using that to project yourself to, you know, move objects to...
Wait, the Force isn't about floating rocks. Except for all the times in the movie that it is about floating rocks.
Yeah, we never had our X-Wing moment in this movie, which this movie really needed its X-Wing rising moment. Another big problem is the fact that this is a new movie, and in a next installment, characters are supposed to grow and progress. Unfortunately,
all the characters are flattened to be more two-dimensional than a sheet of paper.
Yeah, and while the characters do learn fighting skills, I'm talking about them as a character. Rey doesn't really grow as a character in this film. In fact, she gets more bland in the film, and quite frankly, while I did have issues with the fact that she was ridiculously overpowered in The Force Awakens, I was willing to look past that and say, well, maybe there's a reason why she's overpowered. Maybe there's something about her. Kind of like with Anakin, although, I don't really want to get into the midichlorian thing because I don't like it, but, maybe there's something going on with that.
Not really. Oh, you know how we established that she's like a super duper brilliant flyer, even though she has like no skills or expertise in that area? It doesn't come up again. Oh yeah, you know how she's like amazingly, just instinctively incredible with her use of the Force, like better than almost anyone? Well, for some reason she's powing around begging for lessons that are like Force 101 because she literally still has no idea what the fuck the Force is. Why?
I get what
Why is that the way the story is set up?
I get what they're going at because she has a power that she doesn't understand, and I get that that's what they're trying to come across, but the fact that she knows how to force manipulate people into following commands.
Just by instinct. She didn't even know that was a thing you could do, and she did it.
And by being able to force grab a lightsaber all the way across from an incredible distance for somebody who didn't know that was a thing. I mean, it's kind of muddled because she knows the legend of Luke Skywalker, which, if you're going by the logic that everything we've seen in the movies is in the lore so everybody else knows it, I can understand how she would know that. But the fact that she's just able to do it without any sort of training...
Even though she's supposed to be stupid and not know these things somehow? Why can't you just write a female character who actually knows shit? Is that hard? We all know. Why can't she know what the fuck the Force is and what the fuck a Jedi is and what the fuck a laser sword is?
And the crazy thing is probably the best written female character in this movie is a character that's introduced into the movie, and she's essentially Kaylee from Firefly.
I'm down with that. That's fine.
Yeah. Also, props up for actually giving an Asian character a speaking role that isn't, oh, I'm smart with math and stuff, or, hey, I'm a nerd, or, hey, I'm in the movie.
But, I mean, she was a nerd with other nerds. I mean, it's Star Wars. It's fine.
Right, but, like... You know what
she wasn't the nerdy one in Star Wars because they're all nerds.
Right.
Yeah. Like that thing where she and Finn are talking about their plan to destroy the tracker for 6 minutes so they can light speed away. That was some pretty nerdy talk, but it was both of them.
But it makes sense that she knows that shit.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't make sense when Rey knows that shit in The Force Awakens.
When she's like, I don't know things.
Yeah.
But somehow I know everything and I can do everything. Plus, she's like, you need to teach me. She has 2 lessons and she's done. Yeah, and by the way, Luke never got around to explaining why the fuck it is that we shouldn't have Jedis anymore. He got into this is why I don't like Kylo Ren. But he never got into this is why the Jedi Order needs to die out.
But wait till you see it in the next movie, or...
I'm pretty sure they just dropped that shit like it was breast cancer, like...
Yeah, or it's something that you have to read in the books because they couldn't explain it in the movie. Because, like...
The 3-hour fucking long movie, goddamn.
I've noticed that with a lot of Star Wars stuff where... you have these things that don't really make sense in the context of the film, and people are like, oh no, if you read the book and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah, it should be in the movie, but like I can kind of understand.
If it's at least entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the Terry Brooke adaptations of the Star Wars prequels make the prequels tolerable. The book versions of the Star Wars prequels, because...
I get you.
Yeah.
But... Do they, I mean, like, I get that you're saying that you understand the prequels better, but does that actually make you want to watch the prequels?
No, because
they're bad.
Yeah, so, like, going into this movie, I was expecting more of kind of the vibe that we got with The Force Awakens. I wasn't expecting a callback to the kind of experience that we got with the prequels. For instance, going to a casino planet I mean, I know it was a planet that, had an aristocracy, and there was the whole thing with the military industrial complex and selling weapons and all that kind of stuff, but there's a casino in this movie. And I was watching it going, wow, you didn't try to make it look like Star Wars. You just tried to make it look like a casino, which is part of the problem that I had with the prequels. There's literally a scene where they're in a diner, and it doesn't look like a sci-fi Star Wars diner. It looks like a 50s diner, and it bothered me. It's kind of how I felt in that.
Well, I will say, out of any entry into the Star Wars franchise, and I do mean any, except for maybe the holiday special, but I'm including the cartoons, the comics, and the Ewok movies. This is the worst production design and art of any Star Wars entry, period. This is the worst looking Star Wars. And I know it's hip to be a prequel apologist, but if you turn the prequels on mute, they are very aesthetically pleasing for the most part. The costumes are incredible. The designs feel like Star Wars, but also are very original and unique and developed. You have, at the very least, a wide diversity in different types of alien life, in different designs and different kinds of characters that you're working with. At least, the CGI backgrounds and cities all look very good. The pod racing scene feels very realistic and interesting and energetic. The underwater scene with the Gungans being chased by the piranha actually feels fairly realistic and interesting and action oriented. The worlds actually do feel fairly developed. It's beautiful to look at. It's very aesthetically pleasing. This movie looks nothing like Star Wars for the most part. It feels like it's trying to be everything but Star Wars, including James Bond and Hunger Games and Harry Potter. I don't know why, but we don't want to be like Star Wars for some reason. The planets are super bland and boring. We have Casino Planet. We have Red Velvet Cake Planet. A whole planet where it's just white on the top and red underneath. Okay, it looks cool. It looks very Mad Max, but what the fuck is that planet?
It's salt on top of...
No, I know what it is, but it looks like Red Velvet Cake. It doesn't look like a planet. I mean, this was the same thing with the Death Star, where it was the forest on the Death Star? What? Hoth felt like a real place.
Yeah.
Okay. Hoth actually felt like a real location. The forest with the Ewoks actually felt like a real place. The different cities that they went to... Endor felt like a real place. The different cities that they went to in Rogue One actually felt like they existed. Nothing in this movie feels like it exists, but it definitely doesn't feel like it exists in Star Wars world. The whole thing with the casino, I hate it was the casino was color-coded really obviously and really lazily. Everything's black and white because it's fancy, but look at our, rowdy little underdog rebels. They're wearing brown. They stick out like a sore thumb. Oh, and by the way, there's a little goblin chasing after gold coins.
He's essentially a leprechaun. I get it.
No, he literally looked like the goblin in Harry Potter.
Yeah, I did think it was...
Like the Green Goblin?
I did think it was funny, though, that he thought that BB-8 was a slot machine, because,
that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I could forgive that moment just because it was freaking hilarious.
But they kept coming back to that stupid little goblin.
Yeah.
A bunch of times. But there was nothing interesting or unique about the designs. It just looked like a James Bond bar. Oh, we have a replacement General Leia. She looks like any given character from Hunger Games. She has crazy purple hair, and she wears purple dress, and she has a halo. Okay.
Yeah, and...
Sure? Question mark? Why?
And I really like Laura Dern. I really like Laura Dern, and I was watching her, play...
You don't even know her name.
Yeah,
because,
I don't.
She's that fucking pointless. I'm just saying. But then, also all the ridiculous amount of fucking animal porn all look the same.
Yeah,
the porgs and the crystal critters and the really racist island natives were all essentially, oh, poor, pathetic, adorable little little animal things. Don't you just love cute animals in the arms of the angel? Like, I'm the demographic that should be aimed at. I was literally watching Polar Bear Diaries yesterday. I was literally watching that because I was watching really sad videos about starving polar bears because of climate change. And then I had to watch something to make me feel good. So I watched a BBC documentary about cute polar bears.
Yeah, well,
and even I was just like, the porgs are gross. Why are you here? Why won't you go away? And they were just, they don't do anything. The porgs aren't character. I thought the porg was a character. Like, I thought there was a porg that was like Chewbacca's buddy. But no, there's just a bunch of interchangeable porgs that all make stupid screechy noises and all make sad, pathetic pug faces that make you want to kill them like a fucking roach. The crystal critters is not a phrase that should be uttered in a Star Wars movie, but they also just look like fucking Pokemon. They literally just look like evolutions. Why is that even there? Why? They're not helpful. Oh, they're showing us the way out because they're in tune with the nature. But their way of getting out doesn't help us. Rey helped us. So we really didn't need those stupid things. They're just, oh, let's sell more toys to people who like My Little Pony.
Yeah, it was... Okay,
so... It's exhausting.
So one of the big issues that I have with the critters in the film is the fact that the critters lack biodiversity. And, like, on the planets, like, here's the thing. Like, if you go to a location, you're not just going to see one type of animal. And granted, on the planet that Luke was on, because I don't remember it, I'm sorry, but the planet that Luke was on...
You mean Ireland? The most hidden island in the galaxy is Ireland, you guys.
But the planet that he was on, you had the porgs, and then you had the
help.
Pretty much. The monk nun people.
Who literally exist just to serve him and clean up after his mess and maintain the Jedi Islands. Even though none of them are Jedi, so why the fuck would they care? If it's their fucking island, why the fuck would they care about Jedis who came in, colonized, built their own institutions, and then they're like, oh yes, master, we'll fix it. No, don't lift a hand. You stupid people blasted a hole in your own fucking walls. No, we'll take care of it. We'll clean it up. Oh, you're completely destroying our lifestyle. Oh, it's okay. You're the master. It's fine. We exist to serve you guys.
Well, yeah.
What the fuck? Okay, George Lucas is not even involved anymore. You can't even blame his racist-ass fucking caricatures on this. What the fuck was that? That was more racist than, like, the last 2 iterations of King Kong. What are you doing? And do they do anything? Do they do anything? Is there any reason for them to be there? He doesn't
sell more toys?
But he doesn't even milk them or spear them for food. Why the fuck do they exist? Even Chewbacca had to eat a porg at one point.
I will say that, like, even though my complaint about the biodiversity is specific, like, I did like the fact that on Luke's planet there were, like, a couple things. It was just the fact that, like, when you weren't having isolated moments with, like, a fish, some sort of sea serpent, and I think there was, like, one other animal on the planet, but, like, other than that, it was like you just heard the wails of the porgs, the pigeon meets hamster meets pug.
They just look at you with these eyes like, kill me, I want to die. I'm not supposed to exist.
I will say...
What did you humans do to me?
I will say the most amusing scene with the porgs is when Chewbacca is, like, eating like, he's about to eat a porg. And, you know, you just see, like, this one porg just, like, completely horrified at, like, what he's doing.
It would be fine if it was just that, but they dragged that scene on for too long.
Not to mention, like...
And then they're all getting in the Millennium Falcon and ripping shit up, because isn't that funny? And then, oh, Chewbacca's trying to fly the Millennium Falcon by himself. Oh, we totally forgot that it's a 2-pilot system, because Rey flew it by herself in the last movie, so fuck it. Oh, but the porgs are getting in the way, and they're stuck to the windshields, and he's trying to fly, but they're in the way, so he has to push them out of the way, and it's like, good God, when did Star Wars turn into Secret Life of Pets?
Well, also, like, the whole stuff with Rey on Ireland, sorry, but that whole thing, like, was supposed to be taken seriously, but, like, I have a hard time investing myself in those scenes when you just hear the from the porgs in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It didn't help that none of those scenes made any fucking sense or worked on any sort of level of character development.
And as a comparison...
I mean, to be fair, Luke made a couple of funny jokes. Yeah. Like the thing with the blade of grass was funny.
Right. As a comparison... You have this, and then you have Dagobah. Dagobah had a pretty complex biodiversity. You had different animals, like, flying around. You had some walking around and all that kind of stuff. Like, it looked like a place where there are a lot of animals. Even though it's, like, this small little place, you could tell that there was a lot of life there. All of these places felt barren in the film, and it's like... You know, are these planets sufficient of life? Or, like, what's going on? And I can kind of understand that with, like, the Red Velvet place. But, like, you would think that there would be, like, some birds or, like, you know,
they're
something
crystal
else.
Critters.
But, like, you would think that there would be other animals besides those animals.
No, the crystal critters literally don't have to do anything to live. They don't have to eat any form of wildlife or any sort of animal, any kind of plant. They never need to shit or pee. They're crystal critters. They're like little porcelain figurines that run around. They have no need to ingest or excrete anything.
Well, also, like, getting onto that whole name thing, and I promise I'll be done with this, like, right after this, but,
they did say the term crystal critters in a Star Wars movie. That's not like a small thing.
Right.
It's kind of a small thing, but it's like, shitty.
I mean, you could have, like, Chrysalofox or, like, you know, like, done something to, like, Star Wars it up. I mean, like...
There are literally Pokemon names that are more creative and applicable to something like that than your stupid Star Wars crystal critter name.
Yeah, like... I don't know, like an Artifox or something, you know? I mean, yeah, it sounds like Pokemon, but it would have been better than Crystal Critters.
Yeah.
All right, so getting back to the movie, because, like, you know, I know that we're nitpicking and all that kind of stuff because this movie... But a lot of this
adds up, man.
Yeah, it really does. And I know that we are in the minority on this one. I've seen the reviews... And I know that there are a lot of people who really like this film. And my question is, why? But specifically, how does this film add up to the Star Wars lore? Because getting into the plot of the film, you start out, I think it's really great how the film starts, you know, with that battle. It's desperate. You know, it reminds me of the Battle of Hoth, but in space. And, you know, it's kind of like taking the Death Star run in the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope.
Yeah.
And raising the stakes. And I thought that was...
Honestly, it also reminded me of the opening to The Force Awakens, which I think was one of the best parts of Force Awakens. That was probably my favorite thing, was that village skirmish. In that entire movie, that was probably my favorite scene. And this scene was also my second favorite scene in The Last Jedi. Because, like, the stakes are there, the action works well, it's really interesting, it keeps you on the edge of your seat, it feels like Star Wars.
It's well-paced, it's well-edited.
Butt plug in it, but, you know, you just deal with that because everything else makes up for it. It's fine. The butt plug can stay for now. Everything is going, and it feels intense, but it feels energized and it feels real. You know, there's an immediacy and an impact. It doesn't feel like too much to where it's just stagey, and it's not so limp that you don't really care. And it's mostly built around looking at the actual impact of the lives lost. Actually dealing with the idea of casualties in Star Wars, which is a great concept.
And one of the reasons why I liked it was because I watched The Force Awakens literally, I watched it right before I watched The Last Jedi, and I liked that scene because one of my biggest complaints of The Force Awakens was the stakes were too low. Yes, I know that Starkiller Base did destroy 3 planets.
It was literally just Mega Death Star, though.
Right. But, like, getting into the context of the scene, you could see that, General Leia was, really taking an emotional toll on the lives lost.
In this movie?
Yeah.
I loved that. I actually really loved... One of the only bits of arts I actually really liked was there's a little screen that shows how many people died versus how many people survived. And that's really hard to take, and Carrie Fisher really drove that home emotionally, with no words, no exposition, just feeling the devastation and the loss on a personal level. Like, I think that's one of the best Leia scenes, period.
Yeah, and then getting into the film, introducing Rey, who I did think it was amusing that there's this big emotional scene at the end of the last film, and then Luke Skywalker just throws the lightsaber away. I thought that was pretty funny.
It's funny, but there's no consequence to it.
True.
Like, I thought it was funny because I thought that lightsaber was gone. No, it's there. It's fine. No. Of course not. We're not going to actually throw the lightsaber away. Come on. The lightsaber is kind of pointless. The lightsaber doesn't mean anything because anybody can use any lightsaber and it really doesn't matter, but...
Even though that betrays some of the aspects of the movie before it, The Force Awakens, where...
But Finn can use a lightsaber, Rey can use what's his name, Kylo Ren's lightsaber, Kylo Ren can use Rey's lightsaber. For some reason in the flashback, Luke has a green lightsaber. Why? Where the fuck did that come from?
Luke has a green lightsaber? Are you fucking serious right now?
No, he has a blue lightsaber.
No,
that's his lightsaber.
No, he has a green lightsaber in Return of the Jedi. His blue lightsaber was lost in The Empire Strikes Back when he got his hand cut off. And then somehow they magically found the blue lightsaber.
How does Kylo Ren have the blue lightsaber in that scene?
Know.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't fucking know. Apparently it's in some fucking fiction.
No, but what I'm saying is you have the scene where Luke has the green lightsaber, but then Kylo Ren has the blue lightsaber. Why?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, for anybody who has read some of the expanded, I mean, I don't really want to call it expanded universe because they sort of have betrayed the expanded universe, so I would say that, like, the current universe books, if anybody knows, like, how they actually retrieved Luke's lightsaber that he lost in Cloud City, let me know.
But, like, my point is that when he throws away the lightsaber, I feel like that's a bad indicator for the rest of the movie, where it's like, lightsabers are just kind of there, they're just kind of expendable, they don't really matter that much.
Well, and I appreciate that to a certain extent because a Jedi shouldn't only use a lightsaber. Like, that is something that I feel that George Lucas got too hooked to. And honestly, I like the idea.
His laser sword.
Yeah, Luke literally calls it a laser sword in the movie. That happens. But I really felt like this movie could have expanded on the way that the Force is used. Like, maybe you could have explained sort of the powers that Jedi had outside of what limited knowledge that Luke had and Anakin had, because this is an ancient Force, and then, just sprinkled in some stuff to say, hey, the Force allows you to be stronger in these sort of ways, but stayed consistent with the idea, instead of just essentially making them wizards, which...
They can do anything they want at any time, and also they're just going to show up wherever they need to be whenever it's convenient for the plot.
Right. So, getting into that for a second, the Force projection, people literally can appear in front of other people. Like, that needed a lot more explaining than what the movie was doing. Because,
to be fair, there's no explaining the blue ghosts.
There's no explaining the blue ghosts, but the fact that they're dead allows the suspension of disbelief to go. And the fact that, at least in the original trilogy, the Force ghosts didn't really have powers. I mean, they do now.
Yeah, apparently now they have, like, complete command over all the laws of nature.
Now,
to be fair, I think that scene is perfect. But that's kind of if that was the only, like, really big thing out of nowhere, that would be fine. But that's just another thing that they threw in this pile of, like, the Force can just be literally whatever we need it to be at any time.
Now, I will say, to defend that idea with the Force ghosts having that kind of power is the fact...
It's because they're part of the Force. That makes
they're
more
part of the
sense to me.
Force, but one of the things that I really thought was cool in the first Star Wars movie that I really pondered about for years and years was there's a scene where right before Obi-Wan gets killed, he says, "If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine."
And that makes sense if he comes back as a blue ghost and he has more power over the forces of nature because he's literally a part of the Force. Absolutely. I'm with you
and
on
not
that.
just somebody who communicates with Luke
from beyond the grave. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But that's the kind of thing where, like, I would like that if that was the one addition that we got in this movie to what the Force allows Jedis to do. Not one more thing on top of, like, this leaning tower of Pisa. You put all the tiny books at the bottom and all the big books at the top. It's not really going to survive kind of a thing with all the different things that Jedis can do whenever the fuck they want.
Right, and
for some reason, Siths don't have that. It's just Jedis.
Well, and I was willing to forgive, because it was a good scene, the first part of The Force Awakens where Kylo Ren literally stops a blaster in mid-air.
Yeah, because that was awesome. But see, that's the thing. It was awesome.
It was awesome, plus it worked in the context of the scene. Like, I could say, oh, wow, I've never seen that before, but it's not like, oh, wow, that seems really inconsistent to the lore that we have seen.
Right, that just seems like a small expansion. Not like, oh, yeah, by the way, everything we established in the original trilogy is, like, total bullshit. We're going to do something way outside of that.
All right, so I will say, just as a confession, I have not watched all of the Clone Wars animated show, and I have not seen all of Star Wars Rebels. So if this material is in there, or if it's in the canon...
But there's a different canon for the, like, official movies than any of the spin-offs. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the spin-offs that has been disproven in the canon of the actual franchise films.
From my knowledge,
Like, Extended Universe helps, but I feel like you can't rely on Extended Universe to, like, wave away major problems with, like, the temple installments.
Well, when the Extended Universe happened, there was only the books. And there were some graphic novels and video games and stuff like that. But they all had permission from George Lucas. And, you know, it was, like, quote-unquote canon, but not really. And quite frankly, I really liked it because I like the idea of Leia becoming a Jedi, which... Unfortunately, Carrie Fisher, personal life and all that kind of stuff, like, that wasn't going to happen.
But that's expanding on things that happened in the installments. Like,
right.
I like expanded universe stuff, but, like, I can't watch Mad Max and be mad that somebody doesn't know a thing because oh, well, don't you know that it's explained in this comic book? Or, oh, well, it's explained in this art book or in this commentary. Or like, oh, Planet of the Apes, you know, this entire thing that happened? Like, a whole part of the plot of the movie is actually predicated on something that was written about in a comic book or in a novelization.
Well,
that does not fly. Well, I'm not down for that.
That is one of the issues, especially with a lot of modern media that's going on, where there's a lot of context put in stuff outside of the medium that you're seeing. And granted, that is for the nitpickers. But that should
expand what you have, not, oh, well, the weaknesses in what we have are attributed to something from an outside source that you may or may not know that you need to know before you go in to see this movie. Like, for example, with War for the Planet of the Apes. Or not War, sorry, with Dawn. There's actually a comic book that sort of explains this growing tension between Caesar and Koba that started before Dawn. Okay, well, that's nice if you read the comic and you know that, but if you don't, everything in the story makes sense because the whole story and the characters hold up on their own in the context of the film. You can't say, oh, well, a weakness in the movie is because of this thing and you should have known because... No. You can't, like, go through all of the novelizations and all of the spin-off TV shows and all of the spin-off movies and all of the comics just in case, oh, there's gonna be some big plot point that's gonna, like, completely change the way I look at this movie.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there are some interesting things you can learn from those. And, you know, like C-3PO's arm, his red arm. Yeah, that's a
great story. But his story arc in Force Awakens is not detracted by the fact that you don't know what the fuck that is.
Also, I gotta say, right now, one thing that really pissed me off, and this is probably the most nitpicky thing that I'll say in the entire podcast, was I was kind of pissed that C-3PO was all gold in this movie. Mm-hmm. Because many of us know that C-3PO has one silver leg.
Yep.
So... my opinion of this movie is so incredibly mixed because this movie was like emotional whiplash because like every time that I felt like I was really getting invested in the movie kept on pulling me back. I actually thought the stuff with Rey and Kylo was really interesting, and I thought we were going to get an expansion of the character of Rey. Instead, we learn a lot more about Kylo Ren, don't really learn anything about Rey.
At all, in any form, not anything about her motivation, or her as a person, or her personality, or her history, or what she wants to do with her life. There's literally no difference between Rey at the end of the movie and Rey at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing that she wants in this movie is she wants to learn the ways of the Force. Okay, well... You know, Luke Skywalker had much more interesting motivations throughout the entire original Star Wars trilogy. Hell, fucking Anakin Skywalker had more interesting motivations. He was a fucking slave. He, you know, got away from that. He joined the Republic. He, you know, was learning the ways of the Jedi and fighting and the Clone Wars and all that kind of stuff. Like, that is more interesting than what we have been provided with Rey. And they took a character who I thought was somewhat interesting, granted overpowered in The Force Awakens, but kind of an interesting concept of a character that you could expand on, and they did nothing with her. And
oh, she's tempted by the dark side, and she doesn't even try to resist it, except for when she's offered to come to the dark side and she totally resists it. Whoops. Oh yeah, never mind. Well, that is totally not an actual moral conundrum that she faces in the movie at any point.
Well, and one of the things that I like about the temptation of the dark side in the original trilogy is that the stakes are to protect his friends. Like, join the dark side and you can protect your friends, but you can also, like, gain this power.
Well, yeah, people don't just, oh, I am evil, therefore I choose the dark side. That's not how the dark side works.
Right, and I will say that I was looking forward to a more Buddhist idea of the Force in this movie.
And they kind of pay that idea lip service. Oh, you have to have the dark side and the light side, and they have to be in balance. Oh, well, as Kylo Ren grows in power, so too does Rey grow in power, because they are like the yin and the yang, and they have to balance one another, because there must be balance in the Force. But they don't do anything with it. It doesn't go anywhere. They don't develop it into anything more than just, that's how the Force works, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think it would have been more interesting if after the victory of the rebellion, after the end of the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, after Jedi, to have the Republic re-rise and to have, this new order that's coming up struggling. And to see possibly Luke Skywalker or somebody else say, hey, there needs to be balance in the Force. The dark side needs to have its power because that's how the Force works. That would be really interesting.
But no, he doesn't say that. He just says we can't have Jedi anymore. I'm not going to explain why, by the way.
Well, they did explain to a certain extent because they said that, Kylo was leaning to the dark side.
No, but that's why he doesn't like Kylo. That's not why we shouldn't have Jedi.
I do think that there's an insinuation that Rey was part of that. I don't know for certain.
In a 3-hour movie, we should know. In a 3-hour movie that's specifically about these subjects, we should know. And if we don't know, I'm going to say that the movie just didn't bother with it. Because, we have to bother with this whole, we have to run around in light speed and go to the casino thing and let free all the horsies in the open fields. And, it turned out that this was all for naught because, we totally didn't need to do any of that stuff anyway. Thanks for wasting our time for a good 45 fucking minutes.
And I get that you're trying to parallel The Empire Strikes Back with, Luke doing his training on Dagobah and Han and Leia and their misadventures, but most of that was building their character up. You get a little bit of that with Finn and Rose, which I will say that Rose was definitely a well-needed addition to the film. Not only for...
I really liked Rose a lot. In this movie, the big standout characters are Luke, Rose, and surprisingly enough, Kylo Ren of all people.
I personally really liked Poe in this movie as well.
Not really. After that first little on the phone on hold thingy deal he did at the beginning, Poe was thoroughly uncharismatic and unlikable. He's not very interesting. He doesn't have any sort of personal flair or flavor. He's kind of just... He really is just a meathead, which is what everyone says that he is, and they're all kind of fucking right. He didn't know what the fuck he's doing or what the fuck's going on around him, except for I'm angry and I throw chairs around.
I disagree with you on that, because I feel that he felt personally attached to the mission and to, making wise military strategies when he was arguing with, the Princess Leia surrogate, General Leia, sorry.
Right, but here's the thing. Does he do anything? Not really. He doesn't actually do anything helpful. Besides just say, no, we shouldn't listen to you. We should do our own mission.
Oh, he didn't just, destroy practically all of the turrets at the very beginning of the movie?
No, I said outside the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
Because the beginning action sequence is great. I'm saying after that point, he's not... No, he's not very interesting and he doesn't do anything. He attempts a coup,
but,
But who figures it out? Finn and Rose. Who puts in the grunt work to do that? Finn and Rose.
No, I'm talking about
who actually put their life in danger? Finn and Rose. Who actually accomplishes that goal? Finn and Rose. What the fuck does Poe do? Poe yells about how unfair it all is. Great. And he kind of hits on Laura Dern. Laura Dern?
Laura Dern, yeah.
Yeah.
She was in Twin...
No, I know who she is, but
Blue Velvet and...
No, I know who she is. I was checking the pronunciation, but I kind of thought that was going to go somewhere and that would have been interesting, but no, of course that didn't go anywhere because that would have been interesting. I kind of thought they had some chemistry going on.
Yeah, but I'm sure that the Finn and Poe fanfic would be very...
Dude, Finn
furious.
Is supposed to be in love with fucking everyone. He's supposed to be in love with Rey. He's supposed to be in love with Poe. He's supposed to be in love with Rose. Whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was one of those things where it was I get that there are queer fans of franchises that want to project themselves onto characters and while we do need some progressivism in media, forcing it is definitely not a helpful way because it turns people off.
Forcing it. I'm just saying, why can't there be like close friends? Just because there are close heterosexual friends doesn't mean like, oh well, they're gay for each other.
That's one of the things that like really irked me at film school was people always had to read a homosexual context of any relation with two men that is positive. Like, if men aren't fighting, they want to fuck each other. And, like, half the time when they're fighting, they want to fuck each other.
Well, to be fair, in a lot of times in film that is true, because for a long, long, long time, you couldn't actually openly talk about gay relationships. That's not coming out of nowhere.
Right, but, like, at the same time, not every single
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Moving on, though. Poe is not very charismatic or likable after that opening scene. Finn is boring. There is nothing likable about Finn. He's not unlikable,
he was definitely the most interesting character in the last film.
I mean, he was a sociopath, but he was charismatic as fuck, and he was definitely my favorite character. In this movie, there was nothing noteworthy about Finn at all. Not even the way he interacted with Rose. Like, he was not cute, he was not funny, he was not charming, he was not dashing, he was not brave and adventurous, he was not a rebel, he wasn't... I mean, even when he stuck it to Captain Phasma, that wasn't like, oh, he got her, because he already got her better in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing noteworthy about Finn at all.
And plus that fight had, like, very little stakes, and it ended all too quickly, and then...
Whereas the one in Force Awakens had better stakes, even though it was a smaller fight, and was a lot funnier.
Yeah. Oh, but we get to see Gwendolyn Christie's eye for, like, a second.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had a little bit of chills at that, but that's just because I'm a fangirl for her. Like, that's my super, super biased opinion.
Okay.
She's a super beautiful woman, what can I say?
She's a little too masculine for me, but that's personal taste.
Yeah, everyone can have a personal taste. I'm just saying, she happens to be my particular cup of whiskey, that's all. Moving on from that awkward plot point.
Kylo Ren. Holy shit.
That's like, it reminded me of the Muppets TV show where somehow Fozzie became the best character. Fozzie should not be the best character on the Muppets.
Alright, to be fair, we are talking about the 15?
Yes, not like the Muppet show,
Yeah.
the Muppet The Office piece of crap that was canceled for good reasons. Yeah, that's what it's like watching Kylo Ren suddenly become the most fleshed out, three-dimensional, like, understanding character in a Star Wars movie.
I mean, like, watching it, it was like, why are we following Rey around when, like, Kylo Ren is a three-dimensional character and Rey is two-dimensional?
Well, Rey doesn't have a conflict or struggle. Her entire purpose is to help Kylo Ren with his personal struggle, which is significantly more interesting.
Yeah, the film literally says it. Now, I know that this probably isn't true, but, this whole concept that she is nobody. It's kind of what I feel watching it.
Yeah, oh, you're nobody, why are you even here? And to be fair, I'm not dissing Daisy Ridley. Besides the accent thing, I think she does a really good job performance-wise.
She's just not giving material as far as,
it's not her fault, she didn't write the damn thing.
And to get on the writing for just a second, this film definitely needed a little bit more time.
It needed a few more rewrites for sure. You needed to add a lot more character to the dialogue because, well, the dialogue wasn't necessarily bad. Almost every conversation could have been between any characters and it wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. Star Wars for me, Star Wars is all about the characters. Like, if you look at the original trilogy, you can't just swap out the dialogue for Luke and Han Solo and have it work. That would never work. But there's a lot more personality to how they talk to one another. There's a lot more, I really love in the original trilogy how much everyone likes each other and kind of hates each other at the same time. Like, most especially with Han and Leia, but it kind of goes everywhere. Everyone's kind of snarky, and everyone's kind of bitchy, and everyone's kind of on top of things, and everyone kind of has their moment to shine as, like, a badass action hero, and everyone kind of has their time to fall on their face and have a wah wah kind of moment to even them out. But in this movie, it's just exposition. I do super cool things. Well, I do even cooler things. Oh, well, we've got to do even cooler things than have ever been seen in Star Wars movies. Yeah, it's kind of silly once you bring in, like, fucking lightsaber nunchucks and, you know, forced telepathic conversations, but we gotta do something more intense than the last one.
To my understanding, there were lightsaber nunchucks in the Clone Wars.
But lightsaber nunchucks are stupid. Lightsaber nunchucks are... Okay, you wouldn't touch the tail end of a taser. You shouldn't have, like, an electrified force field nunchuck where that has to be in contact with your own fucking body.
Yeah,
that is stupid.
And to be fair, the weapons that the Imperial Guards were using weren't lightsabers. They weren't made from kyber crystals. They were the energy...
They were laser nunchucks. Taser nunchucks.
Yeah,
they're
it's
dumb
more
no
like
matter
the
what you
taser
call
thing.
them. Fine, they're taser nunchucks. That's still stupid. You still have a long sword lightsaber from the last movie. And I'm not done with thinking about how dumb that is.
The fact that, yeah. And nobody else uses that type of lightsaber. That's also kind of weird. It's like, oh, well, Kylo Ren has, like, this special lightsaber that only he uses.
Except for when he doesn't. I actually did kind of like the backstory with Luke and Kylo Ren. Like, I like this whole thing where they each give their different story, and the story kind of evolves as, like, a he said sort of thing. And it is sort of like this morally gray kind of thing where Luke can admit his mistakes. But Kylo Ren shouldn't be as good as Luke Skywalker. Like, he shouldn't be better than Rey and Finn and Poe and, honestly, even Leia. Because to be fair, at least Kylo Ren is doing a lot more than Leia in this movie. You know, I hate to say this, but it was the last movie with Carrie Fisher, and you wasted it by having her be in a fucking coma from space for most of the movie. Not that Carrie Fisher didn't do a great job when she was there, but you fucked up by not having her be more important. And then replacing her in the movie. And then killing the fuck's sake, it was all stupid writing.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, if she died in real life, why not, like, honor her and, like, have her, like, stay behind to do that? Or...
Well, you can't count on her dying, but it's...
Or you can have her in a location where where obviously she dies, so that we can remember her, she dies in the movie.
Well, they did that with Mark Hamill, where they kind of made it ambiguous whether or not he actually dies at the end. If you
I don't even think that's... I think it's very clear that his body has died, but he has not died.
I don't agree with that.
He has become one with the Force, because he dies essentially how Obi-Wan dies.
No, because he could get up and walk around in like an hour. You know, people faint sometimes, or he could totally be dead. Like,
he didn't faint. He didn't faint. Literally, his body collapsed just like Obi-Wan's did.
But
like,
he wasn't like an empty robe with Darth Vader stomping it out to make sure he's not really there.
He was an empty robe. That robe collapsed.
No, he fell over. It's not the point. They did a good job with Mark Hamill. Even if he's dead, they can bring him back as a blue ghost. Carrie Fisher, it sucks because Leia is such an awesome character, and then she was finally promoted to general, and you did nothing with her in The Force Awakens. And then you finally had her do something in The Last Jedi, and then immediately knocked her out. And then brought her back, but then had her replaced, but then killed her replacement, and still didn't really have Leia do anything for most of the movie.
Alright, to be fair to that, and also I will say that I am going to speak ill of somebody who has recently passed, but from what I've heard, Carrie Fisher is a very, very, very hard person to work with as far as acting goes.
I understand that. I'm not saying she needed more screen time. I'm saying you needed to give her more shit to do while she was there.
Well, I mean, they weren't predicting her dying.
No, I know. But, like I said, at the beginning of the movie, they did a really good job. She was giving orders, she was planning out strategy, she was actually feeling the loss of the people who were around her. Honestly, if that was all you saw of General Leia in the movie and she never came back after that scene for some reason, I'd be like, yes, awesome, amazing, because the time she was there was effective. My problem was you spent the rest of the time with her meandering and not doing anything with Leia as a character, just like they did with The Force Awakens. And it sucks because we've literally had since Return of the Jedi to think about what the fuck we want to do with Leia as a character. It's not like you don't have the books, you don't have the original concept, you don't have the shit about how she's strong with the Force, you don't have like the parallel universe stuff about how she was supposed to be the Jedi, and she was supposed to be like, oh no, there is another original, and you couldn't play with that at all. Oh, you went ahead and made her a general, awesome, but she doesn't do anything for most of her time. That's a problem. That's bad screenwriting.
Yeah, so getting on to the Rey-Kylo relationship, I did think that was interesting that they were communicating with each other, sort of like how Darth Vader was communicating with Luke Skywalker near the end of Empire Strikes Back, as well as through various parts of Return of the Jedi. However, that was sort of a suspension of disbelief because
it was almost like a Skype phone call.
It was a little bit more than that because they were actually experiencing being right next to each other, which, given the Star Wars that we have seen, granted, like I said, I haven't seen the shows, but given the movies that we've seen, that's not how the Force works. When things are done like that, it is a projection using technology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, yeah, they're... in the prequel movies, there were some times where the Jedi would have a council meeting and they would just be projections, in chairs and all that kind of stuff. That is established. That is not using the Force. I mean, you could argue... I mean, no, because they were projections, right? Like, is this trying to retroactively say that, like, oh, well, they actually weren't using technology. They were projecting themselves into that space. Like, I don't know, it's just like, and then, oh wait, so the interaction that Kylo Ren had with Snoke, is that not what, I guess...
That was a holographic projection, that was not Snoke using the Force to Skype chat with him.
Right, and so... that interaction was interesting, and this whole sort of like trying to bring Kylo back to the light side and all that kind of stuff. I get it. It's Return of the Jedi again. But, that definitely added to the moral complexity of Kylo Ren.
And unfortunately was the only thing that made Rey interesting at all. The only time I was interested in anything she had to say was when she was talking to Kylo Ren. That's not a good sign. The other thing is like, they try to play the, oh, I think that Kylo Ren could be a good guy. Oh, no, he turned out to be a bad guy. Oh, no, he turned out to be a good guy twist. I'm not inherently against that, but they did use that twist multiple other times throughout the movie with other characters. They do that too many times for one movie.
Yeah, this movie was overly long and complex and, like, unfortunately...
And not like the way that Rogue One was.
Well... the biggest issue that I have with the film is that it doesn't have cohesion.
It doesn't.
Like,
one
these
plot
are
point
isolated...
doesn't work with another plot point.
Right. These are isolated moments strung together, and they don't have symmetry. They don't...
Honestly, the movie needed to not really have almost anything with the Rebel Alliance. Almost all of that storyline needed to be cut in order to focus on Luke and Rey and Kylo Ren. You could have like snippets and bits and pieces, but you couldn't split your focus between those two storylines, mostly because the storyline with the Rebel Alliance was significantly more boring than anything going on with Kylo and Luke.
Yeah.
You needed to spend that time developing your main protagonist, your storyline, and your mythos. That's what you needed to do.
Now, getting on to Luke for a little bit, I think that it was really good to see Mark Hamill finally in a live-action role again, because...
True. He was killing it. He was great.
We need more Mark Hamill in movies. I get that he prefers to be a voice actor, even though he said he's quitting being the Joker.
Whatever. I mean, he's gonna say that, and then we're gonna be like, "No, come back," and I'll be like, "Oh, all right, I'll come back." But then I'm quitting this time. No, come back. Oh, all right, you guys talked me into it.
Okay,
that's not a Mark Hamill specific thing. A lot of people do that. It's fine.
I'm gonna say something that to some people might be blasphemous, but Mark Hamill is the quintessential Batman character. Like, his Joker outshines anything that Kevin Conroy did, and Kevin Conroy is amazing.
Oh, it's really hard for me to say that, though, only because Kevin Conroy is the only well-rounded Batman as far as I'm concerned, where he can do Batman and Bruce Wayne. He's the only one I know of who can do that.
That's fair.
As much as I adore Mark Hamill as the Joker, he's not the only person on Earth who has actually done the Joker right.
That's a fair point.
Cool.
All right, so
back to Star Wars.
So I will say that I was a little bit weary at first with Luke because he seemed a lot more comedic than I was expecting him to be, because like,
but his jokes worked a lot better than most of the other comedy in the movie.
Yeah, the like you said, that blade of grass moment was like
that was really funny.
Yeah. But
the milking scene was also really good. Yeah. That was gnarly. I was digging it. I was digging the shit out of that. That was good.
I also liked his fishing and
fish, like watching him live minus the island natives was really good. I was digging that.
I mean, granted, he is the stereotypical mentor.
No, I don't want to teach you. Okay, I'll teach you.
Yeah. Oh, we do this at dawn and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah.
Or whenever you happen to wake up, actually.
Right. However, I will say that there were issues that I had with Luke as well. You know, the fact that he refers to a lightsaber as a laser sword within the context of the movie is kind of one of those things where it's like,
I mean,
yes, I get that you're
seriously, but that's still kind of offensive.
Yeah, I get that you're sort of breaking the fourth wall in that moment, but like, it did kind of rub me off the wrong way because
like Luke isn't Deadpool.
Yeah. Also, the climactic battle that he had with Kylo Ren didn't make a lot of sense within the context of what I have seen in Star Wars. The fact that he is able to force project himself, I mean, granted, one aspect of it makes sense. The fact that they fired all these guns at him and it didn't harm him, and the fact that he wasn't there, I was like, okay, well, that makes sense that, like, you know, that he used force projection, because that would extend past my suspension of disbelief that he would be able to do that. But in a sense, what he did was even crazier. The fact that he was projecting his entire body to fight Kylo Ren with a lightsaber that was able to interact with another lightsaber. Now, granted, if he was just
his body didn't interact with the lightsaber.
Yeah, and I get that in the moment where he falls down, that you could argue that his body did interact with the lightsaber, that like he was killed in.
But like that's kind of the same way that, like, you know, Kylo Ren's body interacted with Rey shooting him. Like, oh, I feel a pain, but obviously it didn't kill him. The bullet didn't literally enter his body. Although, let's be fair for a minute, that moment doesn't make any fucking sense either.
Yeah, it doesn't make... What I will say is that moment makes sense in this film and this film alone. It doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of Star Wars.
No, not at all. But I also would argue that it doesn't make any sense in the movie either. Like, those kinds of moments just simply don't work. That is too far beyond the suspension of disbelief to be entertaining or interesting. It's just kind of insulting and lazy.
I will say that I did like the Ron moment that was in the movie, where you have... So for those of you, which is probably most of you, who haven't seen the movie Ron...
Which is incredible.
what are you doing with your life? But yeah, get Filmstruck for however long you can get it for free and watch that movie. Like, seriously, or
if
just
you can, try to see a special theatrical screening because it's worth it.
also, like, I think the Blu-ray is like $15. Like, that movie is amazing, but like the shot where Luke goes against the entire fleet of Imperial walkers and like all this stuff, how it's framed is literally the most gorgeous shot in the entire movie. But it also is very similar to the scene in Ron where the father like walks out of like the burning castle and he sees like the two opposing sides and everything like that. The symmetry in that scene is very similar, as well as the color coding, especially with the only time that I will defend the Velvet Cake thing is like, I did like how after this battle goes on, it does look like just a pool of blood on the ground. Mm-hmm. Visually, it's really impressive. However, in the context of it and knowing the stakes, how they actually were, it leaves a lot of suspension of disbelief, especially when you have grown up with this franchise like many of you have. And for the people who are forgiving these moments, I really, with sincerity, want to ask why. Why is this okay? Why is it okay to break rules like this? And, you know, what is your explanation for the rules actually being able to be broken? Mm-hmm. Because I can understand that Luke had a limited knowledge of the Force, and
but Rey's knowledge is more limited.
Right. And as time progresses, I can see how Luke could become stronger with the Force, especially like when he does that limbo dodge and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's totally cool with me because that still seems fair within the context of, you know, expanding and like learning the Force. But like, you know, that whole projection thing is just like, what? And also the whole thing with Rey, the fact that apparently in this movie, the only thing that she knows how to do is, you know, move things, which isn't really like what the Force is, according to Yoda and many other...
To be fair, she can move things and communicate telepathically and see into the future? Since when has the Force been a form of fortune-telling?
Actually, to be fair, in The Empire Strikes Back, the very reason why Luke quits his training to go to Cloud City is because he had a vision of Han and Leia suffering, and he stopped his training to go and help them.
Okay, I guess that makes sense, because, like, there's no way that Rey and Kylo Ren are not related the same way that Luke and Leia were related. So I guess that's fair enough. Okay.
But as you say that, I will say that the film, at least what Kylo Ren says, is that she was sold off for... I
and that story is not true. We all know that that's bullshit, and that's just their way of stalling out for another movie to say that she is Kylo Ren's brother, or sister, / Han and Leia's daughter, and they were the shitty parents who left her on fucking Jakku because they were so overwhelmed by Kylo Ren's evil powers. I mean, like, we've all pretty much figured that out. That's just the way it is. It's not going to be a surprise when they reveal that. I hope to God I'm wrong. If, like, it comes out and that's not the way it is and you want to leave a comment saying, haha, weren't you wrong? I'll be like, awesome. I'm glad I was wrong, because that's too fucking predictable.
Well, I will say that I did make an argument to The Force Awakens about this, and I think that the movie itself enhances this argument, which is the fact that the Force itself is expanding. The Force is awakening, and we see that with the kids. Unfortunately,
in the scene that was somehow probably a commercial for Target.
Oh my God, yes. But like these kids that are saved on the Great Gatsby casino planet.
I fucking hate that scene. And here's why. It's almost exactly like the scene from the last season. Spoiler alert for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, close your ears and think to yourself for a moment. Think of England. In the last scene of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or in the last season, they do a spell to distribute the Slayer power amongst all the possible potentials in the world, which is essentially all the women. Like, let's be honest, it was a very girl power moment. But there was a specific action that caused that event to happen, and it was the badassness of the actual action taking place and the ripple effect throughout humanity that made that moment work. This just whole like, oh, and by the way, little kids can use the Force to bring their broom closer, like this is fucking Harry Potter or something, is fucking lame.
Well, also the fact that you close the movie on that. You close the movie on characters that you haven't even established.
And most specifically on a picture of a ring that I guarantee you can buy in stores now for the low price of $9.99.
Probably
like,
at Target.
Yeah.
That was the most egregious marketing moment, just because it didn't really work within the context of the film, because like
have those rebel rings been in anything else? This like secret ring where it has a little switch on the side where it's like, oh look, I'm part of the Rebel Alliance, you guys, here's my proof.
I don't know. Right in the comments.
I don't remember that ever being a thing. That literally seems like something out of an 80s cartoon.
Dude, I'm like, I legitimately am not sure.
Like, out of all of the Star Wars movies, even the prequels, this movie seemed like the most pandering to sell toys over anything else of any Star Wars movie. Which is pathetic. You don't really have to try to sell Well, there was a whole Star Wars toy scandal. But, like, you don't really have to try to sell Star Wars toys.
Yeah, I will say that, like, Rogue One probably had the worst Star Wars toy sale out of all.
Force Awakens had the biggest problem. Because they had too much Kylo Ren and too little Rey, which is why I think they focused more on making Kylo Ren a better character, was so they could sell, like, their backlog of Kylo Ren supplies that nobody fucking wanted when he was just, like, a boring emo boy.
Probably because Kathleen Kennedy was just like, you guys need to fix Kylo Ren because we have all these toys, and yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But then also, I swear to God, that's the only reason for all the fucking animal porn.
I do like the fact that they destroyed that dumbass fucking mask, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, I don't really agree, because my problem with Kylo Ren is his stupid fucking face. I think the mask is cool, honestly. The mask is fine. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I had a chuckle when he was like, you're fucking hiding behind your mask like a scared little boy. I was kind of into that. But...
yeah. Also, okay, getting into Snoke, because, like... I had so many different theories about Snoke, and the fact that Snoke literally was just Snoke.
A dude in a chair. Like, is there a difference between Snoke and Thanos at this point?
Power. Thanos has a lot more powers.
They sit in chairs all the time.
Hey, yeah.
Like, Snoke literally died sitting in a chair.
Dude, that scene was pretty fucking funny, though.
That scene was cool. But Snoke's fucking stupid throne room is one of the worst sets in Star Wars history.
Okay, do explain.
The red walls that are holographic images on top of windows that would actually let him see what the fuck is going on in the world is stupid. These dumb ass, like, samurai shogun inspired entirely red uniforms are dumb and uninteresting and don't fit in with the Star Wars looks. It's clearly inspired by Nazi Germany. The fact that he's like literally an old geezer sitting in a bathrobe is not intimidating or interesting at all.
I get that they're trying to parallel Emperor Palpatine in...
But Emperor Palpatine was wearing like a monk robe, and he could literally get up and like shoot fire, like lightning out of his and Snoke
fingers. Did that at one moment too.
No, but like he also had really interesting practical effects makeup, but he was at least like a disembodied head. That's interesting. This was literally just like Stan's grandpa in a bathrobe. Also, I was having major Katy Perry syndrome with Snoke, because for both of them, I look at their face and I study them, because I'm like, I know as soon as I look away, I will not be able to picture this again, because you're so forgettable. Like, especially with Snoke, like, he's so CGI that I literally don't like, every molecule in my brain is telling me that nothing is there. Like, I would literally believe a golf ball playing Snoke over the actual effect that they have for him.
Also, the fact that Snoke doesn't really do anything does make his scenes in The Force Awakens worse.
Yeah. The fact that, like, now he's dead and there was nothing interesting about him to begin with does make him a lot worse than The Force Awakens in hindsight. For sure.
Getting on to that whole thing that you had with the Imperial Guards, this is one of those things with toys, because, yeah, like, Star Wars is pretty much known for selling toys. Like, you know, they can't have the same type of troopers in any scene because...
You have to have 1,000,001 fucking variants on what a stormtrooper looks like.
Right.
There was a new variant in this movie. Did you catch that?
Oh, the ones with the little visors? You kind of saw them in the last one.
No, not visors. There's like a sort of asymmetrical look on their helmets now, where they have like a little black patch under their eye on one side. It's not very creative or interesting, honestly. I wouldn't buy a toy of that, because that's not interesting to look at. I'd rather buy a Boba Fett toy. Or a Finn Stormtrooper with like the bloody handprint on the face. Something like that. That's cool. A little black patch under their eyes, not interesting enough to make me buy that.
Yeah, but once again, just a slight variant so you can sell another toy.
But that's the thing. Obviously I wouldn't buy that anyway because I don't have money, but in make-believe land where I could buy whatever I want, I wouldn't waste my time with it because it's not interesting.
Right.
As you were saying with the Imperial troops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the whole thing with the Imperial Guards that I had an issue with is, in Return of the Jedi, I legitimately think that is one of the best costumes in that movie. Like, those costumes are awesome. And I like the fact that they are essentially British Royal Guards. Like, they don't really do anything. They're just there. They're there to respond if something happens, which, like, in the scene, obviously something happens, they would have the training to take care of a situation like that. But
even though they're all slower than Snoke is?
Well, given the fact that Snoke is a Sith-ish, I don't know. Is Snoke a Sith?
I'm just saying, in the scene that we saw, he was able to respond faster than any of the guards around him, so what's the point? They were literally just there to be fodder after defeating Snoke. So it didn't seem too easy.
In the context of the movie, yes. But as far as their design goes, it wasn't really inspired, but it also didn't really feel like Star Wars.
It really didn't.
There were several moments that didn't feel like Star Wars, like the fact that there were some troopers that had numbers on their helmets.
The fucking RoboCops? There were police officers giving out traffic tickets in Star Wars. This is a plot line. This is a subplot. Is that they get arrested for a parking violation in Star Wars. I don't even know what to do with that idea. Like, I mean, clearly they didn't either because they didn't do anything with it. But, like, out of all the reasons to just, we have to get them from point A to point B, we have to put them in a prison to meet this character. Why a parking violation? This beach is private property, and they just crash landed their shuttle here, and I told them they couldn't do that, but they ignored me. Mr. Police Officer, will you go take them away? Certainly, we will take them away. You're being taken away now. They were arrested for a parking violation. What the fuck is going on? Leia in space!
What's crazy about this movie is, I know we have gone on for a very long time.
But that's because so much shit in this movie doesn't work. The characters don't work, the plots don't work, the scenes don't work, the setups don't work, the thematic elements don't work, and we haven't even gotten into those yet. Some punchlines work, the opening battle scene works, we haven't touched this yet either, but the Yoda scene was perfect.
The Yoda scene
is
was
perfection from beginning to end.
It's partly because they actually got Frank Oz.
Which, by the way, I don't know how the fuck they did that, because Frank Oz hasn't been coming back for anything. And he came back for this.
It's because you gave him that Disney money.
I guess so. But the work with to make the CGI Blue Ghost actually look and feel almost as tangible as the puppet you had in the original trilogy, instead of emulating the crappy CGI version of him from the prequels. Definitely a good idea. Everything with the way that Yoda interacts with Luke is perfect. It's funny, it's heartfelt, it's surprising, it's like a genuine, like, oh my god, Yoda is here, holy shit, kind of a moment.
There were tears swelling up in my eyes.
It
Yoda
was
is
perfect.
Literally my favorite character in the Star Wars universe. So
Everything with Luke in that scene was perfect. Everything with Yoda was perfect. Their talk with each other was perfect. Their whole thing of like, what, have you been looking at the Jedi text? Nobody reads that shit anyway. Look, I'll just burn it down like that. Boom. You were too pussy to do it, but I did it for you because it's pointless. Perfect. That is totally something Yoda would do.
yeah.
Perfect. That was the best thing in this movie, and definitely the best thing from like the reboot, like the new franchise starting from episode 7. I would definitely say the Yoda scene. I mean, to be fair, the 2 Darth Vader scenes we've had are both really good. The do not choke on your aspirations, phenomenal. But this is better than that.
Yeah, I mean,
I want
this
to give
gave
credit where credit's due. That shit is perfection.
This to me gave me more chills and more, I mean, not only nostalgia, but also like just a genuinely good moment than the scene in Rogue One where Darth Vader just annihilates everybody on, like annihilates the rebels in that hallway scene.
Well, yeah, because it felt very genuine to the characters, but it was also a situation we hadn't seen them in before. So it was not rehashing like the same ground we've already seen with Luke and Yoda. That's what really made it work, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there is the member berry aspect.
Oh, you remember Yoda? Oh, yeah, I remember Yoda.
But like, they expanded on it, and I will say, if you want to make the next film strong, frickin' put Yoda in it.
Only if you do it like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hell, have Yoda and Luke teach Rey. I would like that. I'm definitely going to watch the next movie. I will
of course
say...
we're going to watch all of them. Like, it's just a given.
Yeah, I'm a completionist. I will say that this movie definitely put my expectations on the low, even though right now I am a lot more confident in J.J. Abrams saving this trilogy than I ever thought I would be. And also, I'm very, very, very worried because Rian Johnson is a director that I really like. And I heard after this movie, they were so pleased with him that they're giving him a Star Wars trilogy. I don't know what he's going to do with it.
Oh my god, whatever.
But after seeing this movie, I do not have high hopes. Maybe if he does something with like smugglers and, you know, stays away from Jedis and all that kind of stuff, it could be interesting. But I don't have a lot of confidence.
I don't either. We actually haven't even touched what I think is the worst scene in the movie.
Go for it.
So there is a scene in this movie where Miss Angelic Hunger Games chick is stuck behind on a spaceship, and
You gotta explain who that is.
She is Laura Dern, but like she has purple hair like a Hunger Games character, but she wears a halo like an angel. Whatever.
And
she has like no other personality besides that.
Have we had characters in Star Wars with different hair colors?
No, not like that. No.
Yeah.
I think we've had like white hair. That's about it. It's not important. It's not important. In the scene, she decides to, as a last-ditch effort, take her butt-plug spaceship and light years travel it through Snoke's ship. That's what happens in the scene. That's not necessarily a bad idea on paper, but the way they filmed and edited that scene was so incoherent that literally our entire audience was confused. There were people, when the audio drops and it's dead silent, people were laughing hysterically and just going like, what? What's happening? Out loud. Because nobody knew what the fuck was going on. That is Zack Snyder's sucker punch level of you are an incompetent filmmaker, go back to high school levels of filmmaking. That makes your film, in my eyes, below a 1 star. That makes your film an incomplete project.
And the crazy thing is, like, I know Rian Johnson is a better filmmaker than this. I have seen Rian Johnson be a better filmmaker than this.
But you can't leave an entire theatrical audience confused by what the fuck they're even looking at for a pivotal emotional scene.
Especially when it's a film like Star Wars.
It's not that hard to follow. Even the prequels with all their stupid policy trade agreement crap is not that hard to follow.
I mean, I can understand, like, people getting confused with movies like 2001 and certain aspects of The Shining.
Well, because those are more about philosophical ideas that can be confusing depending on whether or not you actually agree with them to begin with. That depends on your viewpoint going into a movie. When you're telling a factual plot point with an emotional undertone to it, that should not be confusing. That shouldn't be difficult to explain to your audience in a movie. That might be the worst moment I've had in a movie theater this year. Was that moment watching Star Wars.
Well, yeah, I remember, like, watching it. It was like Rey and Kylo Ren had this exchange where they split the lightsaber, and that was going on. And then there was the fight with. Was that in the same scene? We just watched this film, but the fight with Finn and Phasma. Mm-hmm. Like, all those were going on at the same time, sort of.
Yeah, they were. They were all happening at the same time, and it was sort of the Force was being felt throughout the galaxy kind of thing. Yeah.
It wasn't the fight, but it was when they were captured and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they were about to be executed. Yeah. Yes.
So, when that moment happened, my first takeaway was, what kind of cataclysm is this? Like, you know, like, all these things sort of, like, combined into one. It was like some sort of, like, massive explosion, and like then I was wondering, like, did people survive, you know, like what is going on? And like, obviously, like, we start to figure it out like later, but like, to have, you know, like you said, an entire audience just laughing because they don't know what the fuck's going on is a problem.
I mean, to be fair, there were a lot of moments in this movie where, like, it was a serious situation, people were laughing out loud. Like, out of any movie-going experience I've had, it reminded me the most of 50 Shades of Grey. Because people couldn't take a lot of these moments seriously because they're not good. All you can do is just laugh at how terrible and unprofessional it is.
Yeah, and I truly mean this with the most sincerity. I wanted to like this movie. I thought I was going to like it. I didn't think I was going to love it. Because there are movies I adored that are a part of my soul now that have come out this year. I didn't think this movie was going to be that. But I thought it was going to be a good movie. I thought it was going to be better than Force Awakens. Maybe not as good as Rogue One, but I thought it was going to kind of be in between. I did not expect this to make me question my interest in Star Wars as a franchise because of how fucking terrible it is. I mean, I certainly had that moment when I saw The Phantom Menace.
That's what this movie reminded me of. Because I had that moment where my uncle took me to go see Star Wars, and I was like, oh, it's a Star Wars movie in theaters, cool. Oh, I've seen Darth Maul in the trailers, he looks awesome. And even as a little kid, I was sitting there in the... and my mom really liked Jar Jar Binks, and I was like, oh, Jar Jar Binks looks cool. To be fair, like, the design looks cool, the floppy ears and, like, the funky snail eyes. It looks cool. If you don't listen to anything he actually says, it's a decent design. That's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't agree, but it's okay.
As a little kid, I liked it. As a little kid, I like his face.
What, the fact that he has, like, crab eyes and, like, a duck mouth and, like, okay.
Yeah, I liked that as a 7-year-old, okay?
Okay.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool design. And then I went to the theater, I was like, oh yeah, Star Wars in theaters, cool! And then I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Are we in the wrong movie theater? Is this actually Star Wars? What the fuck are they talking about with midichlorians? That doesn't make any sense with the other movies. Oh god, Jar Jar Binks is fucking abominable. Oh my god, no. Shut the fuck up. I can't watch this anymore. I was a little kid and I was experiencing that, and this made me feel like a little kid in the worst way possible. That sounds really harsh, but there's not a lot of saving graces to this movie. I would say that there's about 15 minutes of footage in this movie that you could salvage, and everything else needs to go and be reworked from the ground up to have, like, a decent film.
I will say that for anybody who's interested in me doing this, is I legitimately think that I'm going to watch this film several times to break it down on why it doesn't work.
Well, there's so many other reasons that we haven't even touched on why it doesn't work. Like, the fight choreography outside of that opening battle scene doesn't work. Not even in the same way that the prequel fighting choreography doesn't work. Because at least that was more like, it's too perfect to really be a fight. This was just... I'm sure that everybody put in hard work because it looked like they were working hard. It didn't look like Gal Gadot levels of laziness or anything.
You need a stunt double. Like, fucking
that's not the
do
problem.
it. Like,
no. I don't think that that's the problem. The problem with a lot of the fight scenes is that there's just no stakes because you know everybody's going to be fine. Princess Leia survived space. Luke Hamill survived blasters to the gut because he was a holographic projection. Like, there was just no way that anybody was going to die because there's just, like, nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But that shows with the fight scenes. They're not rough enough to make you believe that they're struggling, and they're not fine enough for you to, like, truly appreciate, like, the beautiful Chinese martial arts, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon levels of, like, artistry involved.
Right, but, like...
It's just in that in-between that's just bland and unentertaining.
Also, if you're going to parallel movies with, like, The Force Awakens being similar to A New Hope, and The Empire Strikes Back, which many will argue is the best Star Wars movie, you know, the stakes in that were incredibly high. You know, Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite. There's, you know, the fight with Vader that actually has stakes. People lose limbs. Oh, wait, you couldn't have had people lose limbs in a Star Wars movie? Maybe not do a hand this time.
Been there, done that, but yeah.
Right. You know, maybe chop off somebody's legs or, you know, do something like that. I mean, well, been there, done that too, because, you know, Darth Vader.
But you could do that with minor characters.
Yeah, you know, something, I get it. It's PG-13 and you don't want to, like, get too crazy with
But there's, like, literally not even a drop of blood in this movie.
Well, it's PG-13.
The closest thing is Snoke. Snoke was pretty good. That was a pretty good death. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty fucking good. I was down with that, but
yeah, I'm also down for not seeing that character.
But here's the thing,
which is unfortunate because I fucking love Andy Serkis as an actor.
Exactly. Like, the problem with that death is that death was awesome, but the problem was you needed to completely change everything about that character.
Yeah.
And then you could have a death like that. My problem with The Last Jedi 2 is that, like, you're bringing up all these, like, really iconic, memorable moments from Star Wars. The only iconic, memorable moments from this movie were the ones that were painful to watch. Like Leia in space and Porg on a windshield. I don't want to remember that shit. I don't want an action figure of Leia in space like I want an action figure of Han Solo in Carbonite, or even Bikini Leia. That's fine. Or, like, Leia with a laser gun from the first movie. That's pretty fucking iconic too. There's nothing like that in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, just...
Because believe me, General Leia has the worst costumes I've seen on a female character in Star Wars. And I don't mean that in, like, they're unflattering. I mean that in that they're boring as fuck. The only person who has worse costumes was Luke's aunt in A New Hope, where she literally looks like she's an extra who just walked in, like, from off the street.
Which is not to say that she didn't give, like, a good performance in those scenes.
No, this is not about, like, the way she looks as a person. This is about her costume.
Yeah.
Like, she's wearing a fucking denim jacket. It's not interesting. But, like, nothing about this movie works. The characters don't work. The plot doesn't work. The themes don't work. There are a handful of decent moments in the movie, but that doesn't string an entire 3-hour experience together.
Yeah, and, you know, I don't want to be a killjoy, because, like, I know that, like, this means a lot to people and all that kind of stuff, and, like, I know sometimes we are, like, super harsh on movies that, like, everybody likes, and, you know, there are some times where, even when we're doing the podcast, I'm like, wow, what contrarians we are. But, like,
yeah,
I'm watching
true.
this.
It's true.
Yeah, but I'm watching this going like, no, I love Star Wars. I love the lore that's been brought up. I am willing to see stories expanded on. I'm willing to withhold my suspension of disbelief if you want to introduce more aspects of the Force, but they have to make sense within the context of the
something.
Yes, they have to have stakes. It's just like this movie made me so fucking mad to the point where I felt like I was gonna cry watching it.
I literally did actually burst into tears a little bit over how bad this movie was and how upset it made me as a Star Wars fan. Like, it did actually make me stone-hearted as I am. I don't fucking cry over movies anymore, except for E.T. But I did shed a couple tears over this movie for just killing this franchise for me a little bit. And that's sad. I don't want to say that. I don't like saying bad things about Star Wars. I really, really, really don't. The prequels, yeah, that's a punching bag. I get that. But I wanted to like Force Awakens. I thought it was mediocre at best. I wanted to like Rogue One. And guess what? Rogue One, I still think is fantastic. I think that gets better every time I watch it. I really, really, really love Rogue One. And I will die defending that movie. And I feel like The Last Jedi is about as bad as the prequels. And that kills me to say. I want to feel like as technology progresses and as society progresses and as like the film industry progresses and as we get better and better movies all the time, Star Wars 2 can just get better and better all the time. But that's not going to be achieved by just simply how do we one-up what we did last time. That's not the way it works. You can't do that and expect a decent movie. You have to have an understanding for the characters, an understanding for the source material, and have thematic elements that are important, and not just, I gotta say, a lot of this movie was aimed as a downward punch towards Bernie Bros, and I didn't appreciate that either, and we can get into that. But if that's like the only way you can make Star Wars relevant, there's a major problem with your movie. You need to go back and start over, and I don't like saying that. I wanted to like The Last Jedi. I know I thought I would have major problems with it, but that doesn't mean I can't like it. I didn't expect it to like crush me as a fan like it did.
All right, let's get into the political stuff, because, yeah, I know we've gone on for a long time, but, like,
there's a lot to unpack in this movie.
There's a lot to unpack.
It's Star Wars.
And, like, quite frankly, I would say that even after we unpack this, I don't think I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that I'm not actually going to get into anything with Benicio del Toro's character. And that's fine.
I thought Benicio del Toro's character was great.
I thought his character sucked, but he did a good performance.
Well, he was barely in the movie, so
exactly.
It's like not that big of a sin.
Exactly. The performance was good though. There is a really frustrating political subtext to the movie, which is not new for Star Wars. All of the prequels are based on political subtext.
And this isn't reading too much into it. The fact that there's trade agreements and all that kind of stuff, like,
it's political. Yes, it is. And the fact that in The Force Awakens, Princess Leia was literally wearing a Hillary Clinton blue pantsuit, I don't think that it's really reading too much into it. But in this movie, there's this really frustrating paradigm within the rebellion. The rebellion is fighting against the Empire. You know, the rebellion is the good people. They're fighting for freedom and democracy. And the Empire is the bad Nazi fascists. The rebels are blue in this movie. In like the new saga. The rebels are blue. The Empire is red and black. You know, it's pretty obvious that it's Democrats versus Republican.
Well, and also, like, look at the color of lightsabers.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not that difficult to decipher. It's pretty obvious. But within the rebels in this movie, there is a huge divide between the leaders, who are old fogies that are hiding away all this information and not communicating with the people who are putting their faith in them, and the stocky, you know, underdogs who are like, well, if you're not going to do something about it, I'm going to do something about it. It's pretty obvious that it's about the Democratic fractures that are happening between the corporate Democrats and the bluegrass movement Democrats. And in the movie, there's this whole thing where, like, oh, well, this entire time, when you thought we had this nefarious plan to just give up, oh, well, we actually had this super secret plan to, like, hide away in our hideout on this planet where they wouldn't be able to find us. And don't you think that's a good idea? Why didn't you tell anybody that? Why did you keep that a secret? Why weren't you honest about it? Why didn't you communicate that? Why didn't you do anything to earn the support of the people who are depending on you as their leader? Really? Come on, guys. But then, the, underground people who organize their own movement against the, assigned leaders go off and do their own subplot that lasts for way too fucking long and goes fucking nowhere and doesn't develop anything.
It's just adding padding to
It really is. It really is. That shit did not need to be there. When they come back, they find out, oh, well, your plan that you kept a secret from us the whole time that was really in our best interest was a really good idea and actually much better than what we did. Kind of insinuating like, oh yeah, you should have just fallen in line and followed orders. That's bullshit. That's never been what Star Wars has been about. And this whole thing with, like, having people in the rebellion blindly die and kamikazing themselves for the sake of the cause is kind of bullshit.
I don't think it's necessarily bullshit because, like, I understand that, desperate times call for desperate measures.
But that's, like, something you save for a special character. That's not something you do en masse for, like, a good portion of your fleet. As, like, something to aspire to politically. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying you can't ever have a kamikaze character, but just having, like, an onslaught of, like, different people who are just all gonna die for the cause is just kind of like, whoa, maybe we should think about this some more and actually try to save most of the rebels, you know what I mean? Let's try to minimize the amount of casualties at any given point in time.
To give a pass to the movie for a minute, I do think that the stakes in many of those scenes were extremely high, and some people viewed it as there's one life, mine, that can be taken to save many, like possibly thousands.
Absolutely.
Possibly the entire galaxy.
But does that happen in this movie? Most of the rebels die. And most of the rebels that died in a kamikaze, like, outing. It's not proportional.
I wouldn't say most, because a lot of them were, like, just destroyed by, like,
but it happened, like, multiple times throughout the movie. There was the beginning, and then there was the whole thing with Laura Dern, and then there was the thing at the end. Like, it happens multiple times throughout the movie. It's not like a moment in the movie or a plot point in the movie. It happens over and over and over again. I don't think that's something that we need to be aspiring to.
Well, going off what you're saying, I mean, like, look at the Rose and Finn moment. Like, technically speaking, like, if you were to do that with any other sort of vehicle, something that's not fictional, there's a very good chance that she could have just killed them both by doing that move.
Well, there's a difference between taking a chance on something that could or could not kill you and specifically saying, I am dying for the cause right here and now in order to kill more people on the opposing side. Especially people that we established in the last movie are people too, and not just robots and clones that we actually tried to humanize for a second and a half that probably shouldn't be killed either. Yeah. Because let's face it, a lot of bluegrass Democrats are not into the idea of mass murdering people just because they're in a different fucking country. And that's an attitude we need to get the fuck over. What this movie reminded me the most of is this idea that we have towards North Korea and Russians right now, where it's like, oh, it doesn't matter if war kills a bunch of civilians, they're North Korea. Is it Kim Jong-un? No, it's not. They're civilians. No.
And to get onto the context where, like, I'm sure some people are listening and going, like, why are you getting political? Why is this is Star Wars, this isn't reality, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, going back to the original trilogy, the Empire was modeled after the United States and Germany, Nazi Germany.
I mean, no shit, because, like, stormtroopers.
Yeah, but, like, there were also many aspects of, like, expansion and all that kind of stuff that George Lucas, given the time that the film came out, it was during the Vietnam War. American sentiments were not high. And, given the fact that the Ewoks are literally modeled after the Vietnamese, I don't think it's a coincidence. Their guerrilla warfare tactics, all that kind of stuff. Like, granted, there aren't pungent sticks, but, like, there are a lot of parallels. This is not something that is subtle and this is not something that is just us having crazy political theories of things. Look at Rogue One. Rogue One is very much a commentary on our situation in the Middle East. I mean, I think it's no coincidence that most of the stuff that happens in Rogue One happens on a desert planet. Happens on desert planets. Granted, there are some times where they're on vegetate, but all the stuff involving the rebels happens in cities that look like bazaars. And granted, that is similar to how Tatooine looked in A New Hope, but at the same time, which was shot in the Middle East, you can't not draw those parallels. Especially because there are actions taken that can parallel some of the actions that have been taken by terrorists, freedom fighters, whatever you want to call them, because when you look at some of these situations, the morality of everything gets a lot more muddled than how some people would like to believe it to be.
Absolutely. But also I think the other thing, specifically applying to what I'm talking about with the political subtext in this movie, is there is no end to media response to the American election last year. This is fucking everywhere. It's not a stretch of the imagination to think that, this movie that was created pretty much within the last year is actually about American politics, when it's all over our fucking movies and TVs and whatever. I mean, even fucking Kingsman 2 was originally supposed to have a lot more shit about Donald Trump being president. This is not outlandish or out there to think that, this was fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to make another point, though, politically. There's a really disturbing thing in this movie, to me personally, on my political beliefs, where they're like, if you want to break up the American two-party system, you're evil. You're as bad as a Republican, Nazi, fascist stormtrooper. That's fucked up. Because there's this whole thing with Kylo Ren and Rey, where Kylo Ren is like, it's time to be done with the Jedis. It's time to be done with the Siths. They're both fucked up. Their whole system of checks and balances are stupid. One of them is evil, and one of them is too disciplined to let you enjoy your life. We need to just be done and start over and create a new society. Come join me. And it's like, you're Kylo Ren. You're clearly the bad guy. That's evil. Even when hero Luke Skywalker talks about, maybe we shouldn't have Jedis anymore. Well, partly it's based on the fact that he's fucked up and he wanted to kill the two-party system himself by killing a Republican figurehead. And then he decided against it. And he has a bunch of flaws with himself, and he doesn't even trust his own opinions. But there's also the fact that he never really pursued that whole, maybe we should end the Jedis thing. That didn't really go anywhere because Dead Yoda came and talked him out of it.
Now, I will say, the moment that you're talking about with Kylo Ren, that is paralleling the moment that Darth Vader confronts Luke in Empire, where he says, together, we'll kill the Emperor.
That's join the dark side.
And together we can rule the galaxy. That's what he says.
Yes.
He proposes
but he's
that.
Talking about come join the dark side, not let's start a brand new utopian society, irregardless of these chains that have shackled us both down in our completely dissimilar ways previous to this.
I get
it's a complete I'm talking about politically, it's a completely different approach.
Right. I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to break it down because obviously we're going to get tons of feedback for this of people. So I just wanted to say that in that moment it was paralleling this, but there is a deeper context to it, and you are validated in your moment.
I don't disagree with that. I'm not saying that the moment shouldn't have existed. In fact, that was one of the best moments for Kylo Ren, and I like the way that it was written out. But I'm saying from a political standpoint, I think that idea that wanting to do away with a two-party system is evil is disturbing, especially considering that almost every country on the earth doesn't exist in a two-party system. They either exist in a dictatorship, which I do not support in any way, shape, or form, or they have more than two parties. Fucking Denmark as an entire country has a smaller population, the population of Chicago, and they have 15 major parties and even more parties outside of that. It's fucking ridiculous to think that somehow all of America, which between a red side and a blue side, comes out as being pretty fucking purple, needs to support either one or the other, and that one's evil and one's good. And just to have a movie that's like really specifically trying to create these parallels between Democrat and Republican and saying Democrats good, more specifically corporate Democrats good, bluegrass Democrats bad, and if you don't like the Democrat-Republican system, you're bad too, is fucked up.
All right, let's break this down a little bit because I guarantee you there's some people a little bit lost in this.
Okay, where do we start?
All right, so let's break down. So the corporate Democrats, they represent Laura Dern's character and Princess Leia, correct? Sorry,
unfortunately,
General Leia.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, General Leia is Hillary Clinton. We established that in The Force Awakens. It is true. Whether you like her or not, that's just the way it is. Okay.
Right. And Poe in this movie, at least my understanding, represents Bernie Sanders to a certain extent.
Bernie Sanders / Justice Democrats. Like, he creates his own group of rebels who are kind of going to go do their own thing.
Do you think it might be a Jill Stein situation, possibly?
No, I think that Kylo Ren is Jill Stein. Because what he's saying makes perfect sense, but it's still evil because it's not adhering to a Republican-Democrat two-party situation. I know that sounds weird to think that a 13-year-old emo boy represents, like, an elderly lady who fights for, like, hippy-dippy ecocentric rights, but I kind of think politically that's where the movie's heading towards.
And I take it that Snoke is, like, the Donald Trump or whatever, or the Domhnall Gleeson character is...
Probably Donald Gleeson, yeah. This, like, pouty, oh, I'm just such a crybaby over everything that happens to me. Plus, they're both redheads. Like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And then Snoke is more like the Mike Pence, puppeteer pulling his strings behind the scenes, It's pretty concise, as far as I'm concerned. It might be, like, total crackpot film theory. I'm not saying that it's not. If you think, like, dude, you're fucking off your rocker... Maybe I am, but to me, like, the parallels were just jumping out of the screen at me, like... I do fucking obey the Democrats, motherfucker!
I do think it's definitely a theory that needs a little bit more time, needs a little bit more fleshed out, which is not to say that you aren't validating...
for sure, but I just think that this entire, like, this whole... we haven't really seen the Republican Party broken... Well, that's not true. We saw it a little bit in Rogue One, where, like... But in that case, that was a democracy. Yeah. To be fair, as much as, like, oh, it's cool that Jyn Erso was able to, like, rally support and she created her own troop. That's cool. But let's be fair, they took a vote and she was voted out. That's a democracy.
Yeah, and she broke the rules and saved the galaxy.
Exactly. In this movie, General Leia dies. Well, the next successor is just appointed. Nobody voted. It's not a democracy anymore. So there's that.
In the context of the film, like, I'm really sorry. When did General Leia die?
No, not die. I'm sorry. When she was in a coma. And she was out of commission. She was out of commission. Not that she died. I'm sorry. I
right, because I was like, when she it would have made sense if she had died in this film,
Well, to be fair, for all intents and purposes, like, well, she's out of commission, so who's going to succeed her? Her successor was chosen based on seniority, I assume, because they're both elderly women, but there definitely wasn't a vote about it.
So who replaces her now?
Who replaces Laura Dern and General Leia because she's dead?
Yeah.
It's the next elderly woman in waiting. It just seems to be like this, like...
Susan Sarandon, what are you doing right now?
That would be awesome. I would not be opposed to Susan Sarandon in a Star Wars movie. But it seems very, like, English line of succession. Like, you have your queen and then you have the ladies in waiting, Like, it's not based on a democracy at all. But then, when the powers that be are all secretive and it's like, hey... We're in a dire life or death situation. You're not talking to us. You're not telling us what's going on. You're not telling us if you have a plan or not. What the fuck are you doing? Well, if you're not going to work with us, the majority of the people in this, political movement, because even if you don't want to equate it to American politics, rebels versus the Empire is a political movement even in the story of Star Wars. That's politics, okay? When you're not willing to talk to the people who are behind you and supporting you, we're gonna go do our own thing. But then the movie is like, oh, you know how you ran off and you did your own thing and you ran around for all this time and did all this shit and worked your butt off to make this plan work? Well, we secretly had this plan that works in your best interest all along that you actually totally liked. So really, lesson be learned, you should have shut up, fallen in line, and taken our orders. It's bullshit.
Also, for anybody who's still trying to argue that, like, Star Wars isn't about politics and all that kind of stuff, like, seriously, go back and watch the prequels. Yeah, I know that they're not like
prequels. The original series is about the rebels versus the Empire.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you go back to the prequels, there are like long Senate meetings and like, you know, long political moments and stuff. Like you can't escape the political context of them because George Lucas literally shoves it in your face in those.
Right. I mean, part of the reason why I actually do like Queen Amidala quite a bit is not only is she a female character who's actually called a fucking queen for once. Queen it up, bitch! She also actually does have political power. She goes to meetings. She learns about, you know, fucking foreign affairs and military problems and what's going on with her people, and she pays attention and she tries to work with it. She's actually a political leader. As much as I really, really, really like Leia in the original trilogy for being in the thick of things and fighting for her people, I like that we have another version of what that can look like with Queen Amidala. I like both of them. Princess Leia is obviously much better than Queen Amidala, but I like that we have both options. It's cool. As long as you don't pay attention to any of the scenes with her and Anakin. She's a great character. As long as you don't pay attention to most of the reason why she exists. You know.
So, yeah, I was expecting to like this film way more than I did. And as a Star Wars fan, granted, I'm not like numero uno Star Wars fan, but like many people, I've grown up with it and I'm pretty familiar with the lore as far as the films go. Watched them many times, collected the toys, you know, like who didn't? Yeah, this film really broke my heart, and I don't even know what to rate it. Like, I would
rate it about a half star.
I wouldn't go that far, but, like, I legitimately don't know, because, like, I'm so torn with this movie, because every time I was trying to like the movie, I would either hear the little porg cry, or I would be thrown some logic that totally threw out everything I thought I knew about the universe. I mean, you know, kind of like the midichlorian moment, except, you know, a little bit more egregious because it's not just in exposition, it's literally in action. This is a very special type of disappointment that I have.
Mm-hmm. I will say the reason why I would give it about a half star is that the half star almost entirely goes towards the Yoda scene. Because as amazing as the Yoda scene is, that scene with the light year travel takes it to a 0 and it has to work up from there.
Yeah.
In terms of just like actually being a film.
I'm going to give it 2 stars, but like I need to give it time.
I need to give it time too, but my knee-jerk instinct is I would rather watch 2016 Ghostbusters before rewatching this. And I will rewatch this. It's a Star Wars movie. I will watch it a bunch of times, and I never want to see the Ghostbusters movie again. But at least the Ghostbusters movie is a lot shorter, if nothing else. And at least it's only desecrating 2 movies I love instead of 4, and also that I love significantly more. I want to do a top 3 honorable mentions of really petty details that fucked up this movie that we didn't get around to mentioning. Number 1, Rose is a great character who is completely reduced to a love interest with a fucking chicken shit kiss at the end. That was stupid and I laughed out loud. Not a good sign. 2, Kylo Ren is shirtless at one point. Ew. Oh my god, I really wanted to throw up when I saw that. I was just like, oh god, no. 3, the scene with Maz is possibly the stupidest thing I have ever seen in a Star Wars movie. Especially because she can't even give them the hacker's fucking name. oh, the master hacker, go find the master hacker, meh, 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 meh. Oh, we keep calling him the master hacker. Did you find the master hacker? Oh, we found a hacker. Why don't you have a name? Oh, well, he has a rose on his lapel. I don't have time to tell you his name, but I do have time to tell you he's really, really good at oral sex. Leia in space.
Yeah, so mine is the lack of biodiversity on planets, the fact that you only have a couple animals and everything just feels like barren. You have a lack of wildlife, plants, all that kind of stuff. That just like really...
There were like no cities in this movie, were there?
No, like...
There was like literally not even a single city in this movie.
Yeah. Another big one for me is the fact that you focus on these little kids who, given their placement in the movie, especially ending on them, makes...
It felt like Moonwalker, the Michael Jackson movie. That's what it felt like. That's not a good feeling to have in a Star Wars movie.
And it, you know, like you said, it's an inspirational Target commercial where, you know, like a little kid imagines himself holding a lightsaber while, you know, holding a broom. But, like, at the same time, like, we haven't established those kids as characters. So to end the movie on them, especially when you already have a movie that didn't end that way, being The Force Awakens, it doesn't feel like a cohesive ending. Like it doesn't work with the narrative that you've set up. And I understand that the argument could be, well, just wait until you see the next film, because then it might make sense. And what I would say is, it would make sense
to stand up on its own. Any of the Planet of the Apes movies can be watched on their own. I know that it's debatable, the third one, but I would think that any Mad Max movie can hold up on their own. Any of episodes 4 through 6 can hold up on their own.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched them isolated and still enjoy them.
Yeah, this whole thing of like, well, you don't know how it's gonna work out yet. No, fuck that. Just because I don't know how it's gonna work out yet in The Empire Strikes Back doesn't negate how awesome that movie is.
Yeah, and like in the original trilogy, how did every single movie end? It ended with the groups together. You know, sometimes they would be broken, you know, like in the end of The Empire Strikes Back, you know, there's like this sweet moment, even though like Luke, you know, he's gotten his hand cut off, but he's had it restored. Mm-hmm. And there's that moment with Leia and they're like looking out to the stars and like he has the interaction with Darth Vader, and then it like kind of ends there. And then, you know, the controversial though, like, you know, given the fact that we have porgs now, I'm sorry, Nub Nub is not that bad when we have porgs.
Thank you. That's all I'm fucking saying. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I love Ewoks. Can't fucking stand porgs. I literally want to kill it with a flamethrower. I just want to squish it under my thumb like a roach.
Well, the biggest problem is they don't do anything.
They don't do anything. Ewoks do shit. They advance the plot. They have their own ecosystem. They are individual characters as a species. Yeah. They have like a whole fucking war that they're doing. There is no differentiating one porg from another porg, and they do nothing to the movie, they do nothing to the plot, they don't work with any of the characters. And by the way, did I mention that Chewbacca sucked in this movie? How do you make Chewbacca suck as a character?
I mean, the freaking crystal critters, is that what they're called?
That is literally what they are called.
Okay, the crystal critters, as much as I hate their name and am really not fond of their design, at least they had a certain purpose for being in the film. Like, at least, like,
they led them to a location.
Yeah, they led them to a location, whereas the porgs don't do that. Like, they just exist to sell toys.
Like, I literally thought it was gonna be like a C-3PO R2-D2 relationship between a Wookiee and his porg. That didn't even happen. I don't understand. Why did you even bother? Really? To sell toys, I know. And it worked. I can't even tell you how many fucking porgs I saw this Halloween. You know, like the meme of all the girls dressing up like Harley Quinn last year? Like the shitty Harley Quinn from the Suicide Squad movie?
Yeah.
That was this year with porgs. Just porgs everywhere.
God.
Porgs everywhere, as far as the eye can see.
Oh, that's terrible.
Fuck this movie, I'm sorry.
So we have a Patreon, and if you want to support us, in the links below, you can go onto our Patreon site, and you can hear our prediction for what we thought the movie was going to be, so that you can get a better idea of what our expectations were. It's also long, but not as long as this one. Yeah, it's a half an hour of just making predictions and also our takeaway from The Force Awakens.
Also, if you thought that this conversation was too one-sided because Ren and I both happen to not like this movie, look out for our follow-up where we're going to have a group discussion from people who... right now, I have somebody who actually really, really likes the movie, and somebody who liked the movie a lot, but also had a lot of problems with the movie, but also can't really come up with a lot of reasons why they like the movie. So that would be a little bit more interesting, I think.
Yeah, and if you have any talking points or any corrections or anything like that, please put them in the comments below. I will read them. I will take any consideration that, as long as it's reasonable and, is not just taking pot shots and all that kind of stuff. Like, I like to hear what other people's opinions are about this because, I really wanted to like the film. I didn't, but I would like to hear why other people like it other than just liking it. Like, why they thought things worked in the film. And for people that are really knowledgeable of the lore, why this actually works in the context of Star Wars and not just in the context of the film just because they say so. Thanks for listening.